Hello everyone, my name is Charles Terminson and I'm an e-commerce expert here at HiQ. Together with my enormously talented colleague Dennis Rosenqvist, we are going to learn how you can use 4 steps to differentiate your brand using storytelling.
Thank you, Charlotte. There is a scene in the HBO movie BREXIT where several boxes of newly produced campaign material in the form of flyers and banners just have arrived to the Vote Leave campaign headquarters. And suddenly in comes the director of the Vote Leave campaign, Dominique Cummings, here played by Hollywood superstar Benedict Cumberbatch. And he is visibly upset. There is something wrong with the campaign message. Take control. So in a very Hollywood-esque kind of manner, he locks himself up inside a storage room, and he begins to fill the walls and even the floor and the door with lots of notes and doodles. And several hours later, he rushes out of the storage room and he got it. He walks up to the whiteboard and he throws away all this campaign material that have been newly produced, and he adds one word, back. And it might be just one word, but it's a very powerful word, because now you go from talking about a kind of a one-way communication, take control, to a two-way communication, where the word back means that you can fill the messaging with whatever you want to take back. Do you want to take back the control of the border? Yeah, sure. Or the fishing waters? Certainly. Or maybe taking back control of whether or not Turkey will be a part of our inner market? For sure. It's kind of a story of all that was better before, and it's a history that is targeted more or less for the overlooked. People have never been targeted before in these kind of voting campaigns. And because it's up to you as a viewer to fill this message with whatever you want to, it kind of proves that free words can move mountains and actually win elections against all odds. But Dominique Cummings wasn't the first understanding the power of just the 3 simple words. During 17th century, French writer Pascal famously wrote a long letter to a friend, beginning with an apology. He said that, if I had more time, I would have written a short letter. And what's interesting with that statement is that it's even more true today. Because everything today, can be and will be measured. Everything from the placement of that button, the copy of the banner campaign, to the perfect onboarding experience for your customers. So with that said, it's nothing easier than to drown people and listener with facts and data. It's actually the world's easiest task. But on the other hand, explaining something that is very complex in a short and factual way, that is the true challenge. And the Vote Remain campaign had sadly not read Pascal's letter, I think, at least, because their messaging consisted of very rational kind of arguments around statistics and things that the European Union meant for the UK, like 61% of UK small businesses exports go to the EU. But the Vote Remain campaign was right in the fact that it is great to build your argument on powerful facts. But on the other hand, if you don't have any pathos, according to Aristotle's rhetorical triangle, you run the risk of talking to deaf ears, because you must have all the attributes of the triangle in order to get your message across in a powerful way. And the Vote Remain campaign had plenty of ethos, credibility, Remain campaign had plenty of ethos, credibility, in the form of Prime Minister David Cameron. And they also had plenty of logos, as we saw just in the campaign ad that I show you. And the Vote Leave campaign, on the other hand, maybe they had a weaker ethos in the fact that Boris Johnson at that time wasn't such a famous politician, at least not in contrast to David Cameron, at least internationally speaking. But what they lacked in ethos and logos, they countered with pathos. They had a much more stronger and more consistent story than the Vote Remain campaign had. And we all know the results, right? So why should one care about strategic storytelling, you might ask yourself. If we look at today's landscape and we look at the globalization that we all live in right now, I think it's safe to say that product-based differentiation is more or less dead. Because it doesn't matter whether we talk about B2B or B2C or product or services, because everybody have hundreds of competitors with the same USP nowadays. In fact, if I were to log on to Amazon right now and search for, say, headphones, I would probably get somewhere around 20,000 hits. That's hundreds of different makes and brands claiming to have the best price, the best noise cancellation, the best bass, and so on and so on. And suddenly that product differentiation is not so different anymore, right? So, and one might ask, hey, our product is totally new and innovative and doesn't have any competition in the market. But I say that it doesn't matter, because with today's fast pace of innovation, it's not a question of if, rather when, your competitors will catch up with you and release a similar product that you have. And then you run the risk of having to explain the difference between you and your competitors again. But can we get a return on what we invest in a strategic storytelling narrative? I think that both in the short and the long perspective, the answer is yes. Because everywhere I look, when it comes to marketing, I see great value. If we start at the top with our brand, if we can understand the context that we live in today, both us as a brand and our clients and competitors, then we can become what everybody is looking for nowadays. We can become thought leaders. And if we're thought leaders, we can create differentiation in the marketing sector. And with differentiation, we can get more leads. And with more leads, we have the benefit of be able to put higher margins on our price. And then when it comes to actual sales process, a coherent story will actually make us close deals faster. And also, my favorite part, actually, with having a great strategic narrative is recruitment. Because when we recruit people, we can have a faster onboarding and then have those sales reps going out and close deals faster than also. And for HR, employer branding is obviously empowered by great storytelling. And we can get more people to talk about us, for sure. And if more people talk about us, then we can attract more investors. So if we can agree that there is a case to be made for the benefit of having a strategic story, then how can we, in a simple and very effective way, build a great story, one might ask? Well, we can start at the most obvious place, Hollywood. So ever since I was a child, I've been a fan of SpiderMan. And all of you probably knows that Peter Parker gets his powers from being bit by a radioactive spider. But most of you maybe don't remember that at first, Peter Parker doesn't care about his new abilities. In fact, he just uses them to joke around and make money out of it. And it's not until a mugger runs past him and he doesn't interfere that things start to change. And later he finds out that this mugger actually kills his beloved Uncle Ben. And that's when he realizes his mistake. That's when he becomes Spider-Man. That's when he swears to kind of revenge his beloved uncle. And what does this teach us? It teaches us that every great story needs to have change in order to be effective. Because change makes us as viewers curious. And that's exactly what we want our customers as well to be, right? And it also makes us nod of recognition when we feel connected with our hero. We will feel connected to our hero's hardship. So, how can we use Hollywood's way of creating stories in our daily operations as e-commerce managers and marketing managers and so on? Well, we need 4 steps. First of all, we need to have change, obviously, as I just stated out. And why do we want to start with change? Well, thing is, we tend to always start with talking about ourselves all the time. I have done it several times, and you have probably done it yourself too. We talk about how good we are, how great our products are, our services, how many employees we have, where we're situated, etc., etc., etc. What we should do instead is to always start with why our product or service is relevant right now for the customer. And the way to do that is by naming the one big relevant change that affects both us and the client every day. And this creates context of everything we want to communicate from now on. And obviously, the product needs to have a solution to the challenges that comes with this change once we have found it. And the change need to be relevant. It needs to be relevant, but not too broad or general on the other hand. For instance, digitalization and the globalization, for that matter, are 2 big changes that both that we both live with on a day-to-day basis, but they are also very obvious and over talked about today, and thus create a not so interesting kind of point to start from. So let us have a look at a few good examples instead. So the Vote Lead campaign, Let's Take Back Control, is in itself is a promise of change, right? The Vote Remain campaign, on the other hand, had a much tougher starting point, in that they had to kind of promote status quo, stick where we are, stay in the EU. Because have you ever seen someone promote not to change and stick with the past? We never seen any car commercials saying that, hey, maybe you should stick with the car that you already have. It's a great vehicle. That would never happen, right? Another good example is Karma. Karma is a Swedish app that has come up with this great idea for the problem of food that is being wasted from restaurants and cafes. And through their platform, you can find great deals on food that would otherwise be thrown away. So Karma has nailed their change in a statement that is quite funny, I think. Slackers will save the world. A very fun take on an otherwise quite serious problem that everyone is talking about nowadays, right? So Capital is another great example. Capital is a mobile bank, and they help people spend their money using behavioral economics. So their change is kind of a change on how we look on how we handle money today. Because according to Capital, it turns out that money is a team game. Not like most of us think of money, right? At least I for sure think about money being something very private that I want to solve on my own. But we need to have more than just change. There has to be risk in order to get a great story. So Peter Parker, if he doesn't run the risk of becoming Spider-Man, what would happen to the story? It will probably end with, Peter Parker being a has-been, and the story being stuck in status quo, more or less. And the same goes in a commercial context, because every client, every customer that being faced with an offer will always say to themselves quietly, not thinking about it obviously, that we managed this far without you and your product, so why wouldn't we manage to manage like a 10 years or more without you anyway, right? And you count this by introducing risk. You need to have something that the customer might run the risk of losing if they don't decide to run with you, if they don't decide to buy your product. And the Vote Leave campaign solved this by basically listing all the risks that comes with staying in the EU. So they practically said it in the header even, we can't take the risk of voting to stay. The euro is permanently on the brink of crisis. The EU's migrant crisis is out of control, and so on. And Karma states that if you don't do anything about this problem, about saving the world, you will be part of wasting 1/3 of the 10 billion tons of food that's being produced every year. That's nowhere that you want to be, right? And Capital warns you about making investment based on fears. And notice that they don't talk about themselves and their solution here, but in between the lines, you can kind of see that there is some kind of way that you can use behavioral economics here to solve the risk, the problem. So the first step in our story is what I like to call aspiration. Aspiration is an ingredient that we all been using in all kind of communication, like since more or less since the Creative Revolution. And what is aspiration? It is a target that we want our customers to look upon and want to reach for. It is what will happen if we beat the challenge that that comes with the change that we presented in the first part of our story. And the key here is to find something that everybody wants and can agree on. And still, please stay out of talking about yourself and your product here, because frankly, people don't dream about your product unless it's Brad Pitt, for sure, I can tell you. So the Vote Leave campaign, they solve their aspiration by listing all the things that will happen if UK leaves the European Union. So a vote to leave takes back control of. We'll stop handling over 350 million every week to the Brussels. We take back control of our borders, our power, and we decide, and so on and so on. And Karma, on the other hand, claims that sustainability doesn't have to be that hard. It can be as easy as just having a meal. That's a very nice aspiration, isn't it? In stark contrast with all the dark messaging that is out there today around sustainability. And Capital, on the other hand, claims that the solution to their change is no magic. It's just science. Something very safe to hold on to when it comes about your money, right? So for the fourth step, the crescendo. This is the first time where we really should focus on ourselves, on our product and our services. This is where we prove that our product can solve the challenges that ultimately comes with the change that you presented in the first part of your story. And this is a formula, the formula here with waiting with the solution until the end. This is a formula that has been used for decades, actually, in TV commercials. And it goes something like this, that you create entertainment, emotions, and wow factors, and other kind of things that are valued by your viewers, by your customers, for 25 seconds or whatever running time you have on your ad. And then your viewer, your customer, kind of buys into that it's okay that you will sell something to me for the next 5 seconds. It's never the other way around. We wouldn't accept someone selling us for 25 seconds and then entertain us for just 5 seconds. So the Vote Lead campaign, their solution to the problem was easy. It was like, hey, look at us. We can manage on our own. We are a great country. We are the 5th biggest economy in the world. We are the 4th largest military power. And Karma's way is to point out that they have already served all these meals and how much CO2 that has been saved as a consequence of all these served meals. And then it for sure helps to have Barack Obama on your side as well, obviously. And Capital uses user reviews to underline that using Capital is the smartest financial decision you'll ever make. So, to summarize why product differentiation is dead and storytelling is the most important tool for you to use in order to create differentiation, I'd like to quote the great Don Draper of the TV series Mad Men. There is a scene where he's pitching to the client Heinz, and he says to Heinz, "The greatest thing you have working for you is the imagination of the consumer. They have no budget. They have no time limits. And if you can get into that space, your ad can roll all day." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. This was really interesting. Now, I feel that I have gotten a much better idea of how to use storytelling in my day-to-day communication. So, here at HiQ, we meet a lot of customers, and one thing that I've gotten is, how can I, as a marketing manager or an e-commerce manager, use storytelling if I don't have a big budget or the mandate to do so?
Well, I think you can start out small, actually. And one way of doing it is to maybe ask your employees or your fellow colleagues to send in some stories that they have encountered. And it can be stories about how they themselves have been using your product or service, or obviously your customers. And then you can even have a small reward for the best stories that are being sent to you. And obviously you can use your stories and pick out these stories that are the best ones and use them for for content in your social media channels, or you can also have them as anecdotes when you're out and facing clients together with your sales reps. Then you can also obviously use them in paid channels. I remember once when I worked for an advertising agency before, when we were working with Domino's Pizza, and we had this campaign where people had tried out Domino's Pizza and they didn't like it, and we would redo the whole recipe of the pizzas, and then on camera we would find the customers and then have them try the pizza live in front of the camera, actually, and film their reactions, and that in itself became a story.
That's really daring.
Yeah, sure.
To do so. So, are there any times where you can't really use storytelling at all?
I haven't encountered any time when you can't use storytelling, actually. Actually, let me tell you a story about. I did this webinar on storytelling a few months ago, and I actually was contacted by this guy afterwards, and he asked me, "Hey Dennis, can you use your 4 principles of storytelling on a profile on Match.com?"
Really?
Yeah, for sure. He actually became so inspired by my talk, so he rewrote the whole profile and sent it to me in order to have feedback on it. And I've sent him a few notes back, and sadly I haven't got any information on whether or not he succeeded. But I think for sure that his profile became much better, and for profiles or other communication it's the same actually. I mean, someone who's out for a date doesn't want to hear people, you know, talking a lot of them about themselves. They want to hear interesting stories and views on how our society is working today, right?
That's a very interesting anecdote. And if I ever get out there again, I will certainly try to use storytelling.
You should.
Yeah, I should, I guess. So, well, let's face it. You have to make some kind of mistake using storytelling sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest mistake you can make is actually not trusting your instincts and more focusing on the reactions of your colleagues within the organization, or the reactions of the client, or legal matters for that matter. Because face it, we as communicators, the only thing we need to focus on is to really nail that the communication, that people will care about what's the message you're sending. Far too much campaigns, presentations, PowerPoints or whatever are not cared about at all, right? Nobody cares about them, and they become, you know, forgotten documents on a server somewhere. So I think you can always apologize afterwards. So just go with your gut and try stuff out, and just make sure that people care about what it is you are saying.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Well, one last question. We get time for that. Is that what is the next step when it's time, when you're using storytelling? What can you do? What will you do?
Well, I think the reason to use storytelling is all about, often at least, it's about becoming a thought leader within your game, so to speak. And I think that if you want to become thought leader, you can't focus purely on your purpose or why you exist as a brand, as Simon Sinek would say. And it's not all about, you know, a great brand identity either. It really helps to have those two ingredients. But if you want to be thought leader and have a great strategic story, you need to be able to nail the big change and talk about the bigger picture than talking just about you and your products and how great they are and why you exist.
Nice. Thank you so much, Dennis. This has been very inspiring for me, and I hope for all of you who are listening out there today. Me and Dennis, you will find the contact information to us, but you could also take a quick peek into our booth. We are sitting there together with some of our really good colleagues to answer all of your questions. So thank you so much again, and I hope to hear a lot more from you further on. Thank you.